McGraw-Hill Professional presents The Four Pillars of Investing, Lessons for Building a Winning Portfolio, written by William J. Bernstein, narrated by Scott R. Pollak. Preface. In the mid-1990s, I began writing a small book, The Intelligent Asset Allocator, which ultimately became a successful failure. Successful because it attracted positive notice and sold enough copies to please my publisher and myself, and a failure because it did not accomplish its ultimate goal. My aim had been to explain modern portfolio theory, a powerful way of understanding investing, to the general public. What I instead produced was a work comprehensible only to those with a considerable level of mathematical training and skill. After initially failing to interest any publishers, the original electronic version of the book was placed on my website, www.efficientfrontier.com, at the end of 1996. Following a slow start, it gradually elicited much positive comment. The only problem was that almost all of its readers were scientists, engineers, or finance professionals. Closer to home, my family and friends uniformly gave up on it with alarming dispatch. "Bill, you've got to be kidding. I fell asleep after 5 pages. This stuff is way over my head." The dividing line seemed to be slightly north of Statistics 101. If you never took it, or did but hated it, the book might as well have been written in Tamil. Eventually, in a show of unalloyed courage, McGraw-Hill did print it as a trade publication, aimed at professionals, not the general public. The book was a methodical mathematical exercise. First, the behavior of multiple asset classes was statistically analyzed. Next, the theoretical basics of portfolio theory were examined. Ultimately, these two foundations, as well as a practical tour of the investment industry, were synthesized into a coherent investment strategy. The small minority of investors who thrive on such fare felt well rewarded. But as with the electronic versions, most considered it more sedative than informative. Fortunately, the Intelligent Asset Allocator's limited success allowed me a second chance to write a book about investing for the general audience. My watchwords in producing The Four Pillars of Investing were accessibility and enjoyment. I've used engaging historical vignettes wherever possible to illustrate key financial concepts and kept mathematical detail to a minimum. A well-known rule among scientists is that each successive mathematical formula cuts a book's popular readership in half. I've done my best to keep the math simple and the graphs as spare as possible. Now, almost a decade later, this title is in its 17th printing, so I suppose I've succeeded. Special thanks go to those who have provided encouragement and help along the way, including Cliff Asness, John C. Bogle Sr., Scott Burns, Edward Chancellor, Mark Goshnor, Christian Elke, John Reckenthaler, Bill Schultheis, Larry Swedrow, Robert Sadelsky, Richard Thaler, Mike Veseth, and Jason Zweig. I'll never understand what motivated Catherine Dasopoulos and Jeffrey Crames of McGraw-Hill to take an interest in an obscure electronic file by an unknown scribbler floating around in cyberspace, but their editorial and publishing support has been a constant source of delight and satisfaction. Thanks are also given to Stephen Isaacs, who shepherded this work through each step of the production process. There must be no harder job in publishing than getting an author to kill his darlings in the cause of producing a tighter and more muscular manuscript. Stephen accomplished this with aplomb and grace. Author and academic Larry Cunningham and my friends Stephen Dunn and Charles Holloway spent many hours of their precious time hammering out the flaws in both finance and wordsmithing. Jonathan Clements brought not only his time but also his years of journalistic experience at Cambridge, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal to bear in improving the book's detail and structure. Particular thanks go to my business partner, Susan Sharon, whose unique combination of financial savvy, editorial skills, and command of the investment business landscape proved as essential in this effort as it was in my last book.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?